Welcome to F4 Podcasts. I'm Atul Singh, the founder, CEO, and editor-in-chief of Fair Observer. With me today is a truly remarkable fellow, Khosrow Isfahani. He is an open-source investigator for the Atlantic Council in Washington, D.C. He has worked for the BBC as a journalist. He studied physics, subject not extremely popular, especially in the journalistic world, and he grew up in Tehran. Although ancestrally, his great-great-grandfather, or great-grandfather, I'm mixing it up, correct me, Khosrow, later,
I always mix it up myself as well.
came from Isfahan. So, Khosrow, what a pleasure, what an honor, welcome.
Thank you, Atul, for your kind introduction. That was just beyond and above. Thank you very much.
I
I'm
have to
happy to be with you.
I have to introduce an Iranian. Huh? Farsi was the official language of India for 800 years. And today we will be discussing Iran's axis of resistance. I repeat, yes, Iran's axis of resistance. And the topic of the podcast is Iran's axis of resistance is in shambles. What next? So without further ado, Khosrow, tell us, what is this axis of resistance?
So the Ayatollahs in Tehran who run this rogue state that from the get-go of the Islamic Revolution in 1979 has gone head-to-head with neighboring countries and international powers have constantly found themselves in a jam, constantly fearing for the continuation of their rule over this nation of 90 million people. One of the pillars of their security doctrine, their response to outside threats as they perceive it, has been the axis of resistance. What is axis of resistance? It is a network of terrorist groups, and sometimes they are called militant groups, and allied states that most of the time are allied against the United States as well. Who are the members of this axis of resistance? Let's start with Iran's neighbors. In Iraq, you have the Hashd Sha'bi, the popular mobilization units, the PMU or sometimes PMF. You have Houthi rebels in Yemen. You have smaller militia groups that are tightly controlled by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC. The small militant groups under its banner are Fatemiyun and Zainabiyun. The first one is made up of Afghan refugees that IRGC forced into submission and serving its wars abroad with promise of citizenship. And Zainabiyun is made up of Pakistanis.
Are both of these populations Shia? Are the Afghans Hazaras
Yes.
or the Afghanistanis Hazaras, and are the Pakistanis Shia refugees from Pakistan?
Yes. And in both cases, these are marginalized people who try to find refuge or some pocket of safety in Iran. And when they arrive in Iran, they face persecution from the state. That they are barred from using banking services, accessing education, healthcare services, and the this sinister state that the Islamic Republic is uses this fertile ground for recruiting these poor souls to make them into soldiers for its adventurism around the region.
Now, as I understand it, Bashar al-Assad, who's now deposed, he has fled. He was an Alevi, an Alawite. He was Shia. The Houthis are Ismailis, if I'm correct. They are
Yes.
also Shia. So, in a way, this is Iran's Shia crescent extending all the way from Israel's border to Hazara territory in Afghanistan.
So, yes, there is an ideologic element to the creation of the axis of resistance, but
Religious, I would say, even more than ideological.
Yes, that would be a fair framing of it. But when you look at the Palestinian groups that have aligned themselves with the Islamic Republic, you would find groups like the Popular Front for Liberation of Palestine, the General Command. That was a leftist group with leftist agendas, not at all religious, that literally has been one of the linchpins of Iran's network of terror near the Israeli border.
So it's not just religion, it's
Yes.
broader than that. But in the Palestinian case, that's perhaps because Iran has backed them firmly, and no other Arab state is doing so right now.
In case of Iran and its relation with Palestinian groups, it's not about the Palestinian people or religion. It's just that the Islamic Republic sees Israel as its eternal enemy, as a mortal enemy that either the Islamic Republic or Israel should not exist for this war between them to end.
Got it.
That's constantly present in the propaganda of the Islamic Republic. So anyone who is fighting against Israel, the Islamic Republic see it as an ally.
And they join the axis of resistance.
Yes.
So, all right, so I understand now what is the axis of resistance, but what purpose does it serve? What is Iran's security doctrine?
So let me just add 2 points about what the axis of resistance is, and
Please.
I
Yeah.
promise I will answer that question as well. So in addition to these groups, Syria under Bashar Assad was one of the main pillars of the axis of resistance, and the crown jewel of axis of resistance used to be Hezbollah in Lebanon.
Mhm.
These two main elements in the axis have been reduced to rubble over the
Mhm.
past couple of months, as well as Hamas, as well as ouster of Assad from Syria has changed the whole region's face.
Mm.
But back to your question, what purpose did the axis of resistance serve? So it is a combination of, again, ideology and the realpolitik of this ideologically driven authoritarian state that we have in Iran. So after the Islamic Revolution, we have an extended 8 year war between Iran and its neighboring country, Iraq. It was a brutal war. Hundreds of thousands of people on both sides were killed. During
1980 to 1988, Saddam Hussein on one side, Ayatollah Khomeini on the other side.
Yes. And during this period, Iran and its leaders found themselves as isolated. It comes, the war comes at the heels of the hostage situation, forces allied with the Ayatollah Khomeini taking American diplomats in Tehran hostage for over a year. It comes at the same time that Khomeini is exporting the Islamic revolution around the world. So when there is a war, when Iran is under attack, no one is willing to sell weapons to Tehran. So in response, the Islamic Republic has developed a multi-pronged defense strategy. A core element of it, they took a page out of the Soviet book. They have moved the periphery of the war away from the mainland Iran. They describe it as a strategic depth in Iranian defense language.
Well, Pakistan also obsesses about strategic depth, and that is why it has funded and supported first the Mujahideen and then the Taliban uh, to have security in its backyard and an ally against India. So that seems to be a common obsession.
And to great extent, it has been effective for a rogue state like the Islamic Republic that has constantly, over the past 4 decades, sought WMDs. It has kept this regime in power and safe from outside aggression to great extent. So, one is this axis of resistance. That was one of the main pillars of Islamic Republic's security doctrine. The other two is self-sufficiency through development of conventional weapons. What are the examples of that? The ballistic missile projects, the drone projects, these have been ongoing since the inception of the Islamic
And
Republic.
these are conventional weapons.
Yes. And over the past couple of years, we have seen the Islamic Republic exporting these weapons to other countries, including Russia, which have used the Iran made weapons for war crimes against the Ukrainians. So when you look at the wider map of the world, you see footprint of Iran whenever there is death and destruction. That's back to our main topic.
There's also the WMD program. That's also part of the security doctrine.
Exactly. Since the days
And
of
that basically means the nuclear program.
yes,
Also, I suspect chemical too.
there has been aspirations of acquiring chemical weapons at some point during the Iran-Iraq war. One of the senior IRGC commanders even was looking into making a laser weapon that can shoot laser beams from space at adversaries and destroy countries. So they
And
have looked at every possible
did
scenario.
they succeed?
No, that was very cartoonish of him. But
Was he reading too many science fiction
I
books?
am assuming that's where the root of that idea was. But on a more serious note, the Islamic Republic has sought weapons of mass destruction. There has been concerted efforts within the Islamic Republic's establishment to create nuclear weapons. Over the years, there has been periods that this program has been put on pause, but it has always been at least on the back burner. And in recent weeks, with the collapse of the axis of resistance, the Islamic Republic has been left with two options when it comes to maintaining its security. One is expansion of its conventional weapon programs. Over the past couple of months, we have seen multiple tests and drills inside Iran where new drones were unveiled. Allegedly, ballistic missiles were tested. These are all signaling to the world that we are still in the game. We are not bowing out, and we are pursuing all these options. At the same time, a couple of weeks ago, in negotiations with European counterparts, Iranian diplomats, for the first time, I emphasize, for the first time, threatened their counterparts that Iran might change its nuclear doctrine. Over the years, they have stuck to this talking point that Iran doesn't seek a nuclear weapon, but now they are openly saying that they might make the leap. So we are facing this new reality.
I see. So that's the security doctrine. Basically, have deterrence in the form of conventional weapons and weapons of mass destruction. Um, Move the locus of conflict away from the Iranian heartland. Have a strong periphery which acts as the outer wall of a fort to defend Iran, and secure the revolution of 1979, the great Islamic revolution of 1979. Now, all of that makes sense. However, as you yourself pointed out earlier, uh, the axis of resistance has collapsed. Hamas is weak.
Its
Hezbollah,
operational capabilities has been reduced.
yeah,
Hezbollah's
Hezbollah has been
leaders,
decapitated.
yes,
The leadership, at least, has been decapitated. And Bashar al Assad is cooling his fine derriere in icy Moscow. So, how is Iran coping with the new reality?
it's doubling down on the two programs. One, the expansion of the conventional weapons program.
So, such as drones, missiles, and now, of course, a greater show of force.
Yes, we have had multiple drills inside Iran that they are trying to project an image of power and control that nothing has changed and Iran is still capable of fending off if there is war. literally not a single week passes without a senior Iranian military official telling the press that if there is aggression against Iran, it will face decisive response. So that's one element. And on the other hand, there is the threat of acquiring a nuclear weapon. As I mentioned earlier, they are constantly buzzing about making the leap for a nuclear weapon. And I just want to remind you of a senior Iranian official a couple of years described that Iran might act like a cornered cat. It doesn't want a nuclear weapon, but if you corner a cat, you cannot predict what it does next. As broken as that rationale is, and as somber that as that image would be for the world, this is the mindset of the Ayatollahs ruling Iran.
Right. So the Ayatollahs might be cornered cats and might want to spend a lot of money on programs and defense. But the big question arises, where is the money coming from?
So the main source of the money that Iran has for its military expenditure is its revenue from oil and gas exports. The main customers of that, China. Syria used to be a customer, but the payments weren't on time. Same with Iraq. So that's where the money is coming
So
from.
China is sending the money that is keeping aloft Iran.
Yes, but the issue is a large portion of this money is not being spent on anything. The Ayatollahs are constantly in fear of a protracted war, of a foreign attack. So they are saving this money for that possible attack and at the same time lavishly spending it on weapons development. And at the same time, a lot of them and their children are living lavish lives in Iran while the rest of the country is suffering with in absolute poverty.
So, in a way, the Ayatollahs have become the new Shah of Iran.
I wouldn't go down that road and I wouldn't make that comparison.
And he did throw a huge party in Persepolis.
Again,
800 million or God knows what.
again, different time, different context. Uh, so I wouldn't compare these two rulers with each other in any form or shape. Uh,
I mean, I come from India. The Taj Mahal was built for an Iranian woman, and it caused famine and arguably death of thousands, if not millions. So we are used to Iranian opulence.
If I were to compare the approach of the Ayatollahs to the economy and how they are wasting the resources of a very proud nation, it would be what the North Korean dictators are doing.
Okay,
Nothing trickles down to the people.
I see.
People suffer, they stay in power.
Excellent. So, and I guess it is that suffering that is causing increased frequency of civil unrest in Iran. We've had news about women protesting, we've had news about young people protesting. If Iran is using its scarce cash on military expenditure and in corruption, then will this lead to an intensification of this unrest?
So the thing is, over the past couple of years, mostly we can mark to 2016, 2017, we have seen a shift in the Iranian society. In the past, we have had multiple cycles of protests, but they were happening in cycles that there were gaps between them around 10 years.
Hmm.
When you look at the years after 2016, the gap is not even a year.
Mhm.
So people are on the streets over water shortage, fuel shortage, food
And
crisis.
wasn't there a big protest over fuel prices in
Yes,
2019?
yes. In 2019,
Yeah.
the government of the so-called reformist president Hassan Rouhani increased fuel prices 3 times overnight
Why?
because they argued that we cannot subsidize fuel anymore. S- some
They were
economists would,
subsidizing their own harems.
there you go, and spending the riches of this country on their adventurism abroad. So in 2019, when they tripled fuel prices, people took to
Hmm.
streets. And in response, they killed 1,500 people. 1,500. That's a lot.
Not by standards of Joseph Stalin
Yes, but that was a
or even
longer
Saddam
period of
Hussein.
time. And again, they were in an olden age.
Mhm.
In 2019, if you kill 1,500 people in less than a week, in the darkness of an absolute nationwide internet shutdown, that's a nightmare. I lived through that. I was
Yeah.
on the ground in Iran reporting those
Mm.
events.
And you were under a huge threat of life and limb, I suppose.
Like every other journalist who is doing their job.
Yeah.
Uh, so And after 2019, we have seen reoccurrence of these type
Yeah.
of protests in Iran. After that, we had protests against water shortage, which again was brutally suppressed.
Mm.
And recently in 2023, 2022, 2023, we had the Women Life Freedom Movement,
Mhm.
which was triggered by police killing this young woman from Iran's persecuted Kurdish
Mm.
minority over showing too much hair. Over 500
She
people were
wasn't even
killed.
wearing a bikini.
She was very, if you see the photos of her before this incident, everyone would describe it as very modestly
Mm.
covered. So it shocked the whole nation. And
And some Iranians I know have called it, and you as well have called it, a war on women.
yes, and it didn't start with the killing of Mahsa Amini. It has been a war that has been ongoing since 1979 with the inception of the Islamic Republic. This regime has a three-pillar ideologic system. One of them is animosity towards the West, specifically the US,
Mm.
hatred of Israel, it's irreconcilable, and this unending war against women. It started with oppressing women into wearing very, very conservative clothing, forcing them to wear the hijab, firing people from their jobs, arresting them, sentencing them to lashing, denying them access to services, and it's continuing. And to mark that continuation, despite the lies that Iran's chief propagandist Zarif would like, the war,
Javad Zarif.
yes, the former foreign minister and current aide to the president.
He went to school with the father of a friend.
He is one of those.
And my friend's father, who's passed away, didn't have very many pleasant things to say about him.
Not any, I cannot think of a single person with a shred of dignity who would have anything nice to say about Javad Zarif. This man has whitewashed crimes of Islamic Republic, crimes against humanity, war crimes of this regime over the past 4 decades non-stop.
He's a smooth operator, to give the devil his due.
Yes, that makes him a more dangerous actor compared to his predecessor, who died in a helicopter crash recently.
I see. So let's discuss the new world we live in. You and I are sitting in Washington, D.C. Donald Trump is back in the White House. As of today, he has issued 37 executive orders. Things are extremely uncertain. The Pentagon jargon, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, VUCA. We very much are in the VUCA world. So What lies ahead for Iran now?
So, on one hand, we have the Iranian establishment, its entirety, swearing absolute revenge against President Trump after the killing of IRGC Quds Force commander, the Islamic Republic's chief terror operator Qasem Soleimani. They have been the Islamic Republic, its supreme leader, and the civilian government have sworn that they are going to kill the president. The official website of the supreme leader has published posters saying that President Trump should be killed and assassinated.
As revenge for killing Qasem Soleimani, who was killed in Baghdad
Yes.
and, in the eyes of many Iranians, was a hero.
And in the eyes of many, a murderous war criminal who had blood of hundreds of thousands of innocent people on his hands,
Mm.
people in especially Syria.
Mm.
He was the commander that led the bloody crackdown that the Islamic Republic, Russia, and the deposed Bashar Assad led against the uprising of the Syrian people for justice and liberty in their country.
So in particular, a lot of Sunnis who form the majority of Syria were targeted and tortured and killed.
Yes, and he was responsible for a lot of that. And
Okay. So let's come back to
so,
Trump. So
yes.
yes, so
So
the
on one hand,
Ayatollah on the one hand wants Donald Trump dead.
yes, but at the same time, they are extremely afraid of a second term President Trump in office. The first term didn't end well for the Islamic Republic. It was marked with the maximum pressure campaign,
Well,
at,
he threw out Obama's nuclear deal with Iran.
at which many experts believe that was a flawed agreement that didn't include Iran's regional activities and missile program under the JCPOA, the nuclear deal. The
Yeah,
Islamic
JCPO is the
Republic
full form. Yeah.
expanded its missile and drone program. It's enriched the network of militant groups across the region. So, yes, in his first term, President Trump withdrew from the JCPOA, reimposed strict sanctions against the Islamic Republic. And as one very knowledgeable economist back in Iran at the time told me, President Trump was like a lion having Iran by its back, biting the back of the neck of the Ayatollahs, rendering them incapacitated, unable to make any move.
Well, I think Donald Trump would love that image. He's got blonde hair and he fancies himself as a lion. And the Ayatollahs could be the bisons or the wildebeests or whatever you want to call them.
But that's
Uh,
the analysis of this very senior, experienced economist at the time I knew.
Excellent. I mean, he will certainly be appointed in the Trump White House. You should send his name over to the Donald.
So that's one thing that the Ayatollahs are afraid of. But more importantly, is that over the years, the clerical establishment in Iran has almost successfully gained all presidents in the US. The two parties had become predictable for the Ayatollahs in Tehran. They knew how they can play their cards to remain in the sphere of safe without being too limited. But with President Trump, they don't know what would be the consequences of their actions. So right now, literally today, the Iranian supreme leader delivered a speech about the possibility of negotiations with quote unquote the enemy. He said that when you negotiate with the enemy, you should remember who you are negotiating with, but you may proceed. Some has seen this as a signal from the Ayatollah for negotiations with the US. But the issue is, with a regime like the Islamic Republic, whatever negotiation you clinch, whatever deal you achieve, it would amount to nothing but kicking the can down the road. It's not going to change the behavior or the ideology of this regime that has been the largest state sponsor of terrorism around the world. It's not going to change the behavior of a regime that has been responsible for death and destruction around the Middle East. And it's not going to change the behavior of a regime that constantly kills and oppresses the people under its rule.
So what you're saying is Donald Trump would be unwise to negotiate with the Iranian regime, and what you're implying is that he should kill the beast he has by his jaws.
So I'm going to quote actually the two-term president Hassan Rouhani. In the book Secret War with Iran, Ronan Bergman when is talking about the McFarlane affair, Iran purchasing weapons from Israel with US being in the middle and a lot else going on in the background. There is a specific chapter in this whole affair that I believe has remained true. During these negotiations, Hassan Rouhani was a senior security official within the Islamic Republic's structure. He travels to France to meet with different stakeholders in the McFarlane affair. And sitting down with one of the officers negotiating the deal, he tells them that you don't understand the Ayatollahs in Tehran. You show weakness and they exploit it. If you show strength, they would abide. There is a direct quote. The conversation has actually been recorded by an intelligence officer who was in the room. And he says you should tell them that if you cross this red line, this specific military target can be hit and will be hit. And if you do that, the Ayatollahs would change their behavior.
You're sounding like Bibi Netanyahu.
I'm quoting a two-term president within the Islamic Republic.
So Rouhani is sounding like Bibi Netanyahu. So what you're saying is paradoxically, Trump's hardball tactics might yield some results with Iran.
So the thing is, a very wise friend a couple of months ago told me that there is connective tissue between diplomacy, military action, and sanctions. These don't exist in the void. And any administration in the US would be wise to use the wide array of and all the tools at its disposal for containing a rogue state like the Islamic Republic and re-establish deterrence in the Middle East.
On that note, great to have you, Khosrow. Um, we learned a few things. Obviously, we'd love to have you back on a vast area of issues, not just on the Middle East, because you have much broader interests, but also civil society, journalism, um, how uh, geopolitics is shaping up worldwide. And we look forward to seeing you very soon.
Thank you, Atul. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.